The Seed of the Expanse. Chapter 1. And so the story begins, 7 years later, 2070 AD. Jim opened his eyes as a hand touched his shoulder. It was Jamie. He forgot that he was on the balcony of the New York State Assembly building. His mind had drifted away in thought. There were hundreds of people gathered around him, and they were patiently waiting the rare live-time viewing of the special session called for by the Sovereign Assembly. Deep in thought? Jamie asked. Yeah, I was thinking about our childhood and my parents and all of that, he said as the ominous humming noise of the traffic far below him came back to his attention. They would be proud of you, Jim, Jamie said as she consoled the feelings of confusion, anger, and shortcoming that he regularly felt when he reflected on his childhood. I hope they'd be proud, Jim said as he took a deep breath and exhaled. Something about those case files we dug up from my parents' estate makes me feel that they would want us to be here today, he said reassuringly. It can't be coincidental. Jamie tapped her arm twice and a holographic analog screen lit up over her forearm. She scrolled through the snapshots of the profiles of the 7 individuals whom Tom and Linda Planner kept detailed records of. Georg Fitzberg, Winston Walker, Vincent Van Housen, Jamie read out loud as she scrolled through the holo projections. Hey, scroll back to that Van Housen profile, Jim said as the name caught his attention. That name sounds familiar. Jamie flicked her fingers over the projection, and the display seamlessly reverted back to Vincent Van Housen's profile. The display processed quickly, and a 3-dimensional representation of the man's face and shoulders coalesced. The hologram slowly rotated in the space above Jamie's wrist. He has a long, shaggy beard that is flecked with gray and white. His eyebrows are full and sit heavily atop his surprisingly youthful blue eyes. His nose is sharp and pointy, and he appears to be in his 70s. A pair of silver bifocals sits low on his nose. He looks extremely familiar, Jim articulated as he squinted to get a better look at the face. Maybe him and your dad worked together. My dad was in politics. I don't see why they would have... Jim stopped talking suddenly as his attention was overtaken by a large procession of individuals who entered the lobby. The crowd parted as the procession approached. Jim quickly noticed that there was a very strange man leading the procession. He had to be at least 7 feet tall and has unnaturally long arms and legs. But he walked elegantly despite his lanky stature. The collection of individuals who followed are much smaller in comparison, and so the tall man's head rose high above theirs. His face is unnaturally triangular, no doubt the effect of facial reconstruction. Below his shapely eyebrows are thin silver slits for eyes that gazed steadily in the direction that he was heading. He paid little notice to any of the onlookers who gazed at him with a tacit astonishment. There was something about him that didn't look human, but like some other species. His ship arrived from Mars a few days ago. His robe is dressed with silver and white outlays along the anterior, and a cape is tossed over his shoulders that drapes down to his heels. His tall, permed hair is combed backwards and then upwards to form an odd swooping shape. There is an austere and confident countenance to him that projected a sense of authority among his counterparts. The procession headed towards the assembly chamber, which was at the end of a long hallway. 2 imposing oak doors with a trim of intricately engraved gold around the curvatures opened up as the entourage approached the entrance. Jim and Jamie stood on their toes to get a glimpse as to what was inside. A massive auditorium was revealed, and it was bustling with hundreds, if not 1,000 people. They were all dressed in fine clothing, and multicolored holograms floated around them that identified their position within the assembly. As the last of the procession entered the assembly chamber, the doors began to shut behind them and were then sealed off to the public. A half-second later, a massive hologram projection lit up in the space in front of the assembly entrance, and it streamed the event in live time. The crowd oohed and awed as the holo projection played a theatrical introduction for the hearing. "Just look at them," Jamie said as she nudged Jim on the arm. "They can't look away from it." She added as she referred to the intense focus of the crowd on the holograms. The entire crowd was so fixated on the screens that it seemed to be unnatural. Everyone oohed and awed at the same times and never ceased to look away from the live event. "It's the C6 pills. It's what it does to them. They're brainwashed," Jim replied. "More like brain dead." Jamie looked around at the crowd and couldn't find a single person who did not meet her description. She sighed and shook her head. "Well, they're right to pay attention in this case. Something big is about to be announced, and I get the subtle feeling that this Van Housen guy is going to be involved." Jim looked down at the hologram that was still displaying the profile of Van Housen above Jamie's arm. "Let's hope that whatever the case is, it will help us get some answers on what your dad told you all those years ago," Jamie said as she closed off the hologram while the session started. Meanwhile, inside the assembly chamber, an older man with a gray and white beard sat with his arms crossed. A disdainful look overtook his countenance. "This will never work," Vincent Van Housen thought to himself as he watched the presentation unfold. The auditorium was packed full of public officials, scientists, data engineers, conformity code task officers, wealth distributors, politicians, and more. The ceilings are high and concave, with dozens of limestone pillars to support it. Engraved in the ceiling is a golden and marble emblem that reads "The World Sovereign League" and has infamous motto "Unus Orbis, Unus Imperium," circuitously fashioned around it. Intricate glass windows stained with gold run across the entire chamber and gives the assembly a full view of the city before them. The sun poured its rays into the auditorium and illuminated the podium where a tall man with a long black cape stood. The golden rays bathed the man with bright light and created an ethereal glow around him. Van Housen was paying very close attention to Princeton Krause, one of the several hundred sovereign directors of the World Sovereign League. He is very tall and has a swooping hairstyle. His face is unnaturally triangular. Sovereign Director Krause spoke calculatedly slow as he stood underneath the floating display and abreast a marble podium. His long and bony fingers were tapping a silent melody on the surface of the podium when he began to expand on the subject that was causing a worldwide stir. He began to speak of a novel algorithmic tool that would be the perfecter of all the world systems. The director is articulate in his prose, and he captivated the entirety of the room, except for Van Housen and his 6 associates. His voice was sharp and domineering. "Hail law, hail assembly, hail sovereign," spoke Krause. "Today we approach a new era, one in which our perfect law will not be subject to the incomplete interpretations of man, but codified in a complete and all-discerning manner by that which is impartial and equitable. Today we lay the groundwork that will allow us to transcend from the antiquated system of courts and judges. Today marks the laying of the foundation, and we will establish upon it the bulwark of fair accountability for all subjects of the law. Today marks all of tomorrow. Under the World Sovereign League and the conformity law, we have achieved monumental progress that was once thought to be an impossibility by the protracted institutions of old." Van Housen felt a geyser of anger, fear, and regret build up inside him during this moment. Under the World Sovereign League, all subjects do as they are directed. And Van Housen felt as if his own efforts had been used to further solidify the stranglehold of the world sovereign. His and his associates' precious work was seized by the world sovereign and construed to meet their ends. He disdained the WSL and would raise a public objection if it did not spell death or excommunication. Instead of kidnapping Van Housen and his 6 colleagues like they did with Tom and Linda Planter, the world sovereign ordered that they join the ranks and do research on their behalf. They had no choice but to accept. Krauss continued, "Imagine the possibilities of our new creation. When the assembly follows the direction of the sovereign to implement this new system and all of its facets, the world's efforts will finally be coordinated in one direction and with one ultimate aim, that of progress. We are approaching the unveiling of the long-awaited artificial judge, the one true director, the ultimate masterpiece that will faithfully guide our progress towards the future. Long ago, our society parted from the rivalrous natures of nations and of factions to join in unity. The unsuccessful practices of sanctifying the individual have been ruled out. No longer shall personal indiscretions take precedent over that of the collective. The fallacious concepts of liberty and natural right were rightly replaced with a transparent and sweeping law that better serves the totality. No longer shall personal greed and false concepts of personal sovereignty take precedent over that of the one true sovereign. The necessary abolishment of the antiquated concept of natural reproduction has been replaced with a specially designed citizenry that meets all of society's needs and directs the world's focus towards society building and not family building. No longer shall the familial bond take precedent over the collective bond. Under the World Sovereign League, hunger was eradicated. Health is provided for. Permanent residence is secured. Entertainment is consistently provided. Leisure is encouraged. And workload and personal responsibility are vastly reduced. The interweb of neural nets offers the ability for anyone to unplug from the constraints of natural life and proceed into the artificial, where all is perfect and where possibilities are truly unlimited. Our society is quickly approaching new horizons, and today marks the first step towards a greater future for all. Hail law, hail assembly, hail sovereign, unus orbis, unus imperium. The auditorium buzzed with excitement and rose for a boisterous ovation. Once the ovation settled, Krauss thanked the public for tuning in and then cut off the broadcast. With the broadcast now shut off, he began to speak again. His countenance changed, and his voice became stern. He laid out his timeline for the implementation of the artificial judge and divvied out orders to his sycophants in the courtroom. After some time, and after many orders, he called the meeting off. The crowd once again rose for a flattering ovation, and then the assembly members began to intermingle. Van Housen and his team members promptly took this chance to exit the chamber and evade any advances from the assembly members. He led his small group of colleagues down the long hallway and through the large crowd of civilians who were happily celebrating the announcements of the Western Sovereign Director. They considered this artificial judge to be a monumental feat of progress, and no one seemed to bat an eye about it. As Van Housen pushed through the crowd, he briefly met the eye of a young man with closely cropped brown hair, bright green eyes, and broad shoulders, who wasn't as ostentatious in his celebration as the rest of the crowd. There was a beautiful young woman with curly golden hair and ruby red lips standing closely beside him. Her eyes widened in surprise as she saw him. Van Housen felt a tug on his left arm. "Vince, we should discuss this." Ludwig Van Housen, Vincent's younger brother, muttered as he pulled Vincent back towards the direction of the exit. "Not now, Ludwig," Van Housen replied as he gestured above to a surveillance drone. He looked around again to see if the curious young pair was still on the other side of the room. But the crowd had collected in front of him and blocked his view entirely. Odd. The young man looked strikingly familiar. He followed his brother through the exit doors. The group approached a roundabout outside of the assembly chamber building. A black auto van silently parked in front of them, and a butterfly door, once concealed by the semi-amorphous shape of the vehicle, lifted upwards and presented a fashionable tan leather interior. The group entered the vehicle, and it drove off autonomously. Jim and Jamie pursue Vincent Van Housen. "It was him! I saw him as clear as day," Jamie said to Jim as they rushed outside in pursuit of the man who appeared to be Vincent Van Housen. "I didn't get a good enough view. He was gone before I could put two and two together. But your eyes are better than mine," responded Jim as he quickened his pace to keep up with a passionate Jamie Rothbard. "There," she said as she caught sight of Vincent. "That's him." "Vincent!" she voiced loudly, hoping to get his attention. "Mr. Van Housen." The door to the auto van was already closing before they could get close enough for Van Housen to hear them. The streets were bustling with celebrations over the assembly session, and her voice was easily drowned out by the commotion. "Jamie, snap the plates," Jim said anxiously. Jamie quickly slid her fingers left and then right over the analog device on her wrist, and a holographic screen enlarged over her left arm. She pinched the hollow screen with her right fingers and drug it away from its original position, so that it was floating in front of her right eye. As she moved her face, the hollow screen moved as well. She used her right hand to adjust the hollow camera's aperture on her wrist device and zoomed into the plates on the back of the auto van. Click, click, click. "Got it," she exclaimed. "Show me," Jim requested as he peered over her shoulder at the holoscreen. "Here." Jamie drugged the holographic snapshot out from the analog gallery and projected it in front of their faces. J398DQ99. Jim read out loud as he confirmed the plate number. "Okay, now what?" Jamie asked as she looked up at him. He pondered for a moment and then unlocked his own wrist analog. "Send it here." Jamie slid the projection in the direction of Jim, and the snapshot appeared over his wrist. "One good thing about the districts was meeting John Graham," he said as he copied the plate number from the picture and pasted it into a customized search query. He looked at Jamie and gave a mischievous closed smile, and then clicked the blue Initiate Hollow button. The plate number quickly computed in the search query and sifted through the interweb database. The algorithm identified the plate numbers and cross-checked them with names on title, and subsequently cross-checked planned routes, places of destination, home and work addresses, and plenty of other sensitive information. After a few moments, the analog device played a pleasant tone that signified a completed search and then voiced in an artificial voice, "Courtesy of John Graham." "I haven't met many geniuses, but John Graham is definitely one of them," he said as he played with the options on his analog. "So, what's our next move? Don't you think just showing up to his house all willy-nilly would freak him out? I mean, what if he isn't on our side after all and ends up reporting us?" Jamie asked quietly as the buzz of the surveillance drones flying above them cautioned her from talking too loudly. Jim looked up and around before he spoke again. "This has to be our best lead so far. I never stopped thinking about what my dad told me the day him and my mom were taken. He told me to seek out the 7. He wanted me to find those 7 case files. Otherwise, he would have made sure we wouldn't have found them." Startled, Jim and Jamie turned towards the street. A series of patrol cars rushed down the street outside of the assembly building. Their shrieking sirens caused Jim to stop speaking for a moment. 5 small patrol drones hovered above each patrol vehicle. The 5 smaller drones were positioned equidistant to one larger drone that was curved along the top and concave on the underside, like a bowl turned upside down. Centered in the underside and attached to a square pole that extended downward from the hull was a swiveling camera system that searched for wanted subjects. The camera was contained in a circular casing, and on either side of the casing, a pulse turret was attached that undulated with a soft blue glow. On the top side of the hull, a beaming spotlight shone in front of the lead patrol car. Jim looked back at Jamie and disregarded the motorcade as it passed by. This was a regular occurrence in the metro life of New York City. The correctional forces enforce the physical, mental, and psychological equivalents of martial law, but obfuscate the operation by deeming them peacekeeping measures. We have to find them. Our window of time is getting shorter. I can feel it, Jim said as he rubbed at his temples. I know we do, and we will, Jim. You shouldn't worry. You've gotten us this far, and you can take us just a little further. She put her hand on his forearm and then removed it before anyone could see. Jim looked up at her, and a smile crossed his face. If I lived in a perfect world, he spoke, it would just be me and you. She finished his sentence in a knowing whisper. But there's more beyond us, she said quietly. We have so many who rely on us. Rely on you, Jim. They look to you for guidance. We do it for them, too. I know we do, Jamie. He lowered his voice to a whisper and leaned towards her. But in a perfect world. He looked down at her breasts and then back into her eyes, then grinned at her. Jamie gasped playfully. Jim Planter, she said with a gasp. Keep your mind on the mission, mister. I always do, he said. Jim looked out into the traffic, and a mix of emotions rose within his chest. He thought about the world as it is on Earth today. No couples, no marriages, no naturally born children. It is one for all, and all for one. No one person belonging directly to another. With these thoughts, he felt a mix of disgust and trepidation. On the other hand, his love for Jamie burned so deep within him that being with her was just as important as succeeding in his mission. She drove him in a way that she could never truly understand. With these thoughts, he felt deep desire and pure longing, but also a sadness in that he could not truly express how he felt to her for as long as they remained on Earth. Jamie immediately noticed the pattern of his thoughts. She knew him so well. All of his expressions, from the slightest to the most crystal, conveyed everything to her. Jim? She nudged at him. Jim looked up at her again, and a very thin coat of water glossed over his eyes. Yes? He asked. Jamie looked up and around before she spoke. We will be together in time. I want you so badly, and I feel everything you are feeling now. Please, Jim, be strong for us. Be strong for me. There is nothing that could ever separate us. I am with you until the end. Jim was more enamored by her now than he had ever been. A fire rose from within him, building and building. He knew only one thing for certain in this moment. He would plant a new future for him, for Jamie, and for the rest.